Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for another live stream episode of Dogman Encounters. I really appreciate you joining us. For tonight's show, we're going to welcome back a guest who came on episode 497 and told us about what were, for the most part, positive encounters he had with a particular dogman that he helped when he was a kid. As you'll remember, Cody on episode 497 came on and told us about this juvenile dogman that he met when he was a kid. He found out that it was injured and he actually tried to help it. Well, he had other encounters with that dogman years later, and everything just turned out to be positive. Well, when we left him towards the end of that episode 497, there was a lot of sentiment hoping that he would have another experience with one of these guys down the road, most notably that particular dogman. Well, unfortunately, he contacted me earlier this week to let me know that last Saturday he had another encounter. It wasn't with that dogman, it was with a different one. And, well, things didn't go very well, unfortunately. So, without wasting any more time, let's bring Cody in here now. Cody, thanks so much for coming back.
Hey, Vic, thanks for having me. Yeah, I want to first and foremost say to everybody that last time said that they think I've got an encounter again in the future. I got words for you.
Yeah, big words. Things definitely didn't go the way we had hoped.
No, and thank you for everybody that did listen. And last time, it was just shy of a month now. And looking back and on the video again and seeing all your comments and everything, thank you all so much, everybody. You've all been very supportive, very good to me. But yeah, despite what we had all hoped, I guess, from last time and based off of here and everything, it was a very different experience this time. It was definitely not the little guy that I've had found before, that's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt about that. It was quite different. I'll tell you what, though, Cody, for the people who've missed episode 497, please tell them about yourself.
Yeah, I'll give a little recap. So again, my name's Cody. I'm from Minnesota. I currently live in Florida. When I had these encounters as a child, I was 12 years old. Is when I first found the young dog man. I found him injured in my family's storage barn on our hobby farm. Excuse me. And I helped to patch up his wounds and clean up his blood, And then I had encountered him a couple more times over the years as I got older. And he made it known to me that it was him. So we met up again when we were both grown. And, I went on to serve in the military after high school, and I was wounded overseas. And when I came home, I had encountered him again, and he kind of helped me to get the help I needed at that time. So that was, a positive thing to look back on too. It's definitely not the kind of experience that many people have. So thinking about it, I'm very grateful that things went the way they did.
I'm so glad they went the way they did also. Yeah, when you think about dogman encounters, normally you don't attach any positive spins to them. You think they're all going to be negative, but you're living proof that sometimes they can be positive, and thank goodness for that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little bit of a different story this time, but you get what you get.
Yes, it is.
And I know people were probably hoping for an update on anything with him. I already forgot to mention. I'm already forgetting. Um, I had mentioned that I had the dreams about him since I moved down here to Florida, and I haven't had any since the last time I was on the show, unfortunately. So no updates there with that. Um, but and again, we don't know if it's just dreams or if there's actually something there or not. But I just wanted to let folks know. I know some people were wanting to know, but unfortunately, nothing new with that. So
You've had dreams about the bad dog man, but yeah, unfortunately, like you said, not the good one.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny how that works, isn't it?
Well, at first glance, it might be, but no, it really makes sense. That last encounter, the most recent one that happened last Saturday night, yeah, that is going to leave you thinking about it and cause some nightmares. So I actually get it. You said that you knew about the big following, all the listeners rooting for you and supporting you when you came across the comments, but how long have you known about all the support you've been getting from coming on episode 497?
I'm sorry, you said before?
No, how long have you known about all the support you've been getting from the listeners on episode 497 when you came on and did that?
Oh, well, right after we did that recording, I went and I looked on the live stream and I could see people commenting it already, and I was able to look back and actually read the chat that happened while we were talking, and that's when I first saw it, and that was a great feeling right away. And then just seeing that number has grown over time. So it's since we did the episode, is I knew right away. But so I guess for about a month now, but it's still great to see.
Time does fly. It doesn't seem like it's been that long, but yeah, I guess you're right. I guess it has been just about a month. One thing I forgot to ask you last time around, Cody, that I should have asked you is whether or not you're actually hoping to have another encounter with that good dog man. Were you?
I think I mentioned it. I'm probably never going to actively seek him out. I know a lot of people were saying in the comments, you should go home, you should go camping, see if he shows up. I don't think I'm ever going to do that because I still don't believe that we should probably really be actively seeking these creatures out. I think they're better left alone. They definitely don't need us for anything, really. But if I ever do see him again, I'll take it for what it is when it comes. I think it will definitely be a nicer experience than this one I had last weekend. But if I see him, I see him great. If I don't, I'll always have the memories.
Well, that's a good way to look at it. Yeah, you never know. An encounter with even that dog man might not go all that well because of whatever variable. So I guess why push your luck? So that makes sense to look at it that way. When you contacted me earlier this week, Cody, you were in a really bad way. Without telling us about the details of this latest encounter, what can you tell us about how this most recent one affected you?
Oh gosh, well, it was not good. It was pretty bad on my end. I after I had seen it, I tried to tell some people about it and didn't go great. And I just was so frantic I couldn't relax. I started drinking to try and calm myself down. That didn't do nothing. When I finally uh, Monday morning, once they reopened, I called the VA and I said, "Hey, I need to come in. I need to see about getting a refill on some of those old anti-anxiety meds I used to be on." So they started me back on those. But oh gosh, I remember when I called Vic on Tuesday. I finally texted him Tuesday morning. I said, "Hey, I saw another one. It didn't go well." And he called me and he said, "How you doing?" And I said, "Well, the meds haven't kicked in yet, so there's that." And Vic laughs, and I said, "Well, you laugh, but I'm only half joking." He goes, "Oh, really?" I think almost you were even expecting it to be something a little better than what it was, Vic. But
I
oh
was.
gosh, I was panicking, I was cursing, just relaying it all back to Vic. I was not in a good state at all.
Like I said, I could tell you're definitely in a bad way. I was really taken aback. I thought if I heard back from you, it would be positive things, maybe an encounter with that same dog man and another quote unquote good encounter. But yeah, when you told me you had a bad encounter and I could tell you're having so much trouble, I thought, what in the world? What's going on? What happened? So yeah, I couldn't contact you quick enough to find out what was wrong and what happened. But speaking of that, all right, Cody, please tell us about this most recent encounter now. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
All right. So it kind of started last Friday with the last live stream with Mike and Paul. Great episode. Thank you to you both if you're listening. That was a great episode. And I remember it had come up. Somebody was saying, and I think Mike talked about it too, like you can conjure these dogmen or something like that, by speaking about them, and that can't necessarily be true, because if that were the case, Vic would be seeing dogmen every hour, every day, all that stuff, and similar people, similar things like that. And I just thought that was kind of interesting, and it kind of stayed in my mind. I'm like, yeah, that probably don't seem right. Well, we go to the next day, Saturday night. It was probably around 11:30 at night, and I was taking my dogs outside for the last time of the night. And I have two small Chihuahua mixes and a small Jolo. It's currently a Mexican hairless, and the Jolo and one of the little Chihuahuas had gone out, but the third one didn't want to go outside. And I thought that was really unusual because she's kind of the alpha of the pack, and she had her ears down, she had her tail between her legs, and she was shaking. And she never gets like that. You know, she's got a bit of a Napoleon complex to her, and she didn't want to go outside. I'm like, "What's going on here, girl? Why? Let's go." So I picked her up and I carried her out back. Now, when you go out to my backyard of my house, I've got a screened in porch that sticks out a bit off the back. And the only light that I have back there is one single little light right by the sliding glass door there. And it doesn't really penetrate the screen porch too well. So it's not super light when you actually get off the porch. But I took her out there. I carried her out and I set her down in the grass, and she's still kind of just shaking and staying at my feet. She doesn't want to go. I think, "What are you doing, girl?" Well, I'm out there for a little bit, and then I hear this really weird off-sounding bark come in the distance from behind my house. Now, there's two other houses behind my house. I live in town, you know, I live in a neighborhood. I'm not in the country anymore, unfortunately. But I hear this bark, and we hear barks all the time because just about everybody in our neighborhood has dogs too. But this bark sounded really weird. It sounded really off, really low, and it almost sounded like someone was like when it started. It was a really weird, like human kind of like, I don't even know how to describe it. I guess I made the noise. I don't know how else to describe it. But I heard that and thought that's weird. And then I was hit with this really odd smell. It kind of smelled like a mix of wet dog and like rotten fish. And then I start to hear like crunching of leaves and sticks from behind my fence. I've got a 6 foot tall privacy fence that goes around my yard. I've got a decent sized backyard. And I'm just looking down at my dog all this time. I'm just listening to this stuff and smelling this stuff, not paying too much attention, but obviously thinking, like, especially that weird bark and the smell are weird. And then the crunching, I figure maybe it's just squirrels or something. We got some crazy squirrels around my yard in the trees. And my dog is still down there shaking. And then I hear a low pitched growl, and my heart stops. And I freeze and I think, I know that sound. I've heard that sound before. I heard that sound when I was 12 years old and I encountered that little juvenile Dogman. So I slowly look up from my dog up to the fence, and I can see the outline of a very tall Dogman standing on the other side of my fence. Now, mind you, that again, that light from the porch didn't get off the porch too well, so I couldn't make out the full thing like in great detail, but I could still tell what I was seeing. And, you know, his head was probably about 2 or 3 feet above this 6 foot fence. And he's looking right at me. And he's got red, glowing eyes. And I'm starting to panic internally because I thought, oh crap, oh crap, oh crap. And obviously I said something much worse than crap. But I thought, this is the nightmare scenario. This is one with red eyes and they're glowing. You know, if you caught the last episode I was in, I kind of elaborated on what my thoughts might be a little bit if they were the dogmen with the red eyes, and I'll get into that in a little bit here. But just to describe what I could see, you know, the red glowing eyes and his head, it kind of had the shape of the what's it called, the werewolf from that movie, Werewolf in London. That's what I could kind of make out what the shape of his head looked like. And he was tall, obviously, because he was over top of the fence, but he was thin and gangly. You know, he didn't look like super jacked and buffed up like the dog man that I encountered was as an adult. He was really thin, gangly, and he looked like he was mangy. You know, his hair looked kind of patchy and messed up, and black. It was dark black from what I could tell. And he had the ears pointed up and he was growling. So I could kind of see he had his teeth showing a little bit. Not too well that I could see from that, but he's just standing there staring at me with those glowing eyes, growling a little bit. And I'm like, okay, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Panicking in my head. Again, to me, this is the nightmare scenario. This is one with red eyes. And I did the only thing I could think to do was to bend down, keeping my eyes on this thing, pick up my dog, and then make my way back into the porch and back inside. I got back inside. I turned off the lights. I locked the door and I closed the curtain, and I went into the bedroom, and I found my partner in there, and I said, "Hey, you got to look out the window. You got to see this." He goes, "What?" I said, "There's something outside. I can't describe it. You got to see." So we look out the window and there's nothing there. And I thought, that can't be right. I even flicked on the light and there's nothing there. And he said, "What? What's the problem?" I said, "I don't know how to describe it, but I think there was something there watching." And he said, "You think it was a person?" I said, "No, I don't know what it was. I couldn't say it in the moment." And he's like, "Well, it must be nothing. You must be just seeing things." So we go to bed not too long after, and I'm just shaking. I can't sleep. Absolutely shaken by this thing. Again, to me, just the absolute nightmare scenario of seeing this thing. And so we're in bed, and it's quiet. It's dark in the room. And I start to hear, not too long after, scratching sounds behind me on the wall. The headboard of my bed is against the outside wall, and I start to hear these scratches along the wall. And I thought, no, 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 please no, he's outside. Oh no. And the scratches go on for a little bit and then they stop. And then I hear a loud thump right above me. I'm like, he jumped on the roof. Crap, he's on the roof. And somehow I'm the only one hearing any of this. My partner's sleeping next to me. We got the two small chihuahuas in the bed under the covers. They're not reacting. And my Jolo's got her own bed on the floor next to the bed, and she's not reacting. I'm like, am I really the only one hearing this? Like, how? I know I'm a light sleeper usually as it is, but I couldn't sleep at all, and everybody's sleeping through this, and I hear, the footsteps just one at a time slowly thump, thump, thump on the roof above me, and the thumps kind of start to slowly go towards inward to the bedroom, and then I start to hear them towards the kitchen, and then after a little bit it stops, and then it's just quiet. It's all gone. And I'm thinking, what in the world? There's no way that this all happened again. And it's a different one this time. I thought I'd never, if I ever experienced another one again, I would figure that it'd be the one that I saw before. But of course, now I'm in Florida, and when I saw him before, it was all in Minnesota, and I figured I'm not going to see him down here. But here I am seeing an entirely different one, and it's one with the red eyes. It's the nightmare scenario for me. So, anyways, so that's how it ended. And so I go outside the next morning to look around to check for evidence. And I look at the wall outside, and there's no scratches on the wall outside. And so I kind of thought, well, maybe then he wasn't actually scratching. Maybe he was just running his hands across it, because it doesn't look like it was scratched up. Didn't look like any damage to the roof. And when he was standing behind the fence, he didn't put his hands up on the fence or anything. I never saw his hands. He just kind of stood there behind it. But he would have been standing in my neighbor's yard, who lives behind me, and they've got a little 5-foot tall chain link fence that goes around their property, and then my fence is against theirs. And so obviously I couldn't just walk into their yard and check the fence or anything, but I couldn't, just from looking from the road, I couldn't see any signs of hair or anything broken or anything. So I'm thinking, did I even witness this thing? Did I see it? Because I've got, like I described in the last episode, and I touched on a little bit here, I've got a brain injury from my time in the military. I got messed up pretty bad in an IED blast. So sometimes I wonder, did I see that? Am I just imagining this thing? Regardless of if I believe I saw it or not at this point, I'm still super shaken up about it. And like I said a little bit, I touched on it a little bit. I'm I started drinking every day to kind of try and take the edge off, just because I'm on edge all the time. I started getting really irritable again. Um, and nothing's helping. I tried, like I said, I tried telling my partner about it. He didn't believe me. Just there's nothing out there. And I tried telling my next door neighbor. She and her husband are my best friends down here. And I talked to her. I said, "Have you noticed anything weird around here lately?" Because we help look out with each other. Because the crime in this town has started to kind of go up recently, so we keep in touch with each other about that. We'll let each other know if we caught anything on our security cameras, everything like that. And of course, I don't have any security cameras in the backyard. So if I were to see anything, I didn't, naturally. I only have them in the front yard. And then when I did check the cameras, there was nothing on them in the front yard. But she says, "No, what do you mean? What do you mean seeing anything?" And I said, "Well, I described to her the sounds I heard the night before and that weird smell. And I said, I thought I saw like some glowing red lights up by the fence. I didn't say it was red eyes or anything. But I said, I thought I saw some red lights up above the fence. And she goes, "No, I didn't. What do you think that could be?" I said, "Well, I do kind of hear these stories sometimes about these potentially supernatural things. And then she just gives me a little punch on the shoulder. She goes, "Oh, you're just messing with me. You're just playing." So I'm thinking once again, okay, great. Well, here we are again. I can't tell anybody again about this stuff. So just having a super hard time with it at those points. So Monday morning finally comes along, and I think I said it before a little bit too. I called the VA. I said, "Hey, can I come in? I want to see about getting on some of these medications that I used to be on. I haven't been on any meds for probably about a year and a half now. I've been doing pretty good without them." But I went in and they were able to refill it because I was on them before. So Tuesday morning I went in and I got them. And then that's when I decided I should tell Vic. So I texted Vic and let him know. And then, we had our phone call and I was frantic and panicking and just as I recall the thing. And I was just terrified having to talk about it again. Just reliving that incident, seeing this nightmare creature. But yeah, that's the gist of the encounter this time. I've got a bit to say about it, for sure, but I wanted to make sure that I got that the whole encounter described out this time before I get into any of that.
I felt so bad for you when you started telling about all the things it did. And the things that it did were a textbook for Dogman. I mean, it showed itself to you to let you know that it was there. And then before you knew it, it was knocking on the house to let you know, okay, I'm still around. And then it goes up onto the roof and I'm just checking off boxes. Like I told you that day, just checking off boxes. That's just textbook Dogman behavior. It's just horrible that of all the things that could have been doing, it decided to just mess with you that way. That's awful.
Yeah, they do like to do that, don't they? And that's the first thing you told me was when I talked to Vic again. He's calming me down, reassuring me. He could have done anything he wanted to. What he wanted to do was just show you that he was there and scare you, and he did a fantastic job. I fell for it.
Oh, that he did. They're so good at doing that. But like I told you that day, I mean, it was just a performance. If he wanted to get you, he had every opportunity to do that. He could have just broken in through the window or through a wall and grabbed you. But the whole thing, like I told you that day, that never happened because it didn't want to do that. So, yeah, I'm going to say the same thing now. I told you 500,000 times in that conversation. If he wanted to harm you, it would have already happened. So, I mean, yeah, something goofy might happen, and yeah, he might decide to change his line of thinking if you were to try to shoot him or take profound action or something like that. But yeah, I mean, unless you run into a belligerent one that just actually wants to kill people on sight, they're very deliberate in how they act normally. So yeah, thank goodness. If you have to have an encounter with one that wants to maybe have a little fun with you, that's one thing. But if you have an encounter with one that actually wants to hurt you or kill you, that's totally different. And like I told you that day on the phone, he proved with his own actions that That's not the kind of Dogman he is, thank goodness.
Right. And the thing that, in the time that since Vic and I had our last phone call, Vic really calmed me down at that phone call. I needed that super bad. And the medication that I got from the VA has helped to, calm my mind, so I'm able to think rationally and clearly and absolutely take in everything Vic just said. If he wanted to do anything to me, he would have. All he did was stand there and stare at me, and then he went and made some noise like I'm still here. But that's why I'm really glad that Vic, you asked me after we were done talking if I wanted to come back on the show and talk about it. And he said the only caveat is only if you think it's going to help you, because if you don't think it's going to, then I don't want you to come back and make things worse. And it's good to come and talk about this because y'all are really the only people I have been able to talk to about it, and talking things through really helps me a lot. And, from the last time that I was on the show and seeing all your positive comments and everything, the support is outstanding. Thank you all so much. This is the place I know that I can come and talk about this, because I tried talking to my best friends about it. I tried talking to my partner about it, and I got nowhere with it. So being able to come here and talk about it and hearing everything is fantastic. Thank you all so much. But in the time that I've had to think about it, I talked to Vic probably 3-4 days ago. One of the things that I was saying was, I had my preconceived notions about this one with the red eyes. That's what scared me so much, this nightmare scenario, seeing the one with the red eyes, and the fact that his head looked like the werewolf head from that movie. It was scary. He physically, his appearance scared me. That was the biggest thing, because I think back to the Dogman that I had encountered before as a child, and tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to refer to them separately. I'm going to refer to the old one as golden eyes and the new one as red eyes, so that I can properly tell you which ones I'm talking about and everything, and keep it shorter. But when I had encountered golden eyes as a kid and a little bit later as a young adult, he looked very natural. He looked like he was he had a timber wolf head on a large, like Mr. Universe human type body. Whereas when I see this guy now, he looked like a movie monster. And so it scared me so much more because of that. And if y'all remember, I'm kind of a scaredy cat too from the past. I'm very easily scared. Um, so the biggest thing too, of course, it was these red eyes, like I keep saying. So before all of this happened, I had kind of preconceived notions that, again, we don't really understand fully what these dogmen are. Are they creatures? Are they flesh and blood creatures? Are they spiritual? Are they demonic? Are they from the ether? We don't know. But I kind of had the theory before that the one golden eyes that I had seen, that he was something flesh and blood creature, natural. Whereas when I saw this red eyes and I panicked, my thought process there was because I was under the assumption before this that the red-eyed ones might be something potentially demonic, something evil. Because it didn't seem natural to me because of how scary he looked. And in nature, there are so few animals with red eyes, beyond some fish and reptiles and bugs and things, but nothing that really glows. Their eyes naturally glow. There's very few animals that have stuff like that. Certainly nothing we think of that are like very large humanoid dog people. So I always had kind of been under the assumption that maybe they would be potentially a monster. And so that's what super scared me. But after having this encounter and having the time to think about it, especially with a much clearer head and having Vic, um, reassure me and talk me down, I almost wonder if maybe they aren't. Because in my mind, if something demonic wants to do something to you, they will. They won't just watch you. That's all he did. He just looked at me from beyond the fence. He didn't do anything. So I'm almost wondering now, maybe it's just we just don't know about these creatures. Maybe there's so much more to them than we could ever know. And so my thought process has maybe almost changed on what this is. Now, a very good point that Vic had brought up to me. He asked me, "Do you watch any other Dogman shows? Do you listen to any?" And that was a very good point, because I don't really probably 2 or 3 years ago, I had seen some stuff on YouTube, different channels, but looking at them now, it's like those were almost like creepypastas. It's somebody reading from a script. So you have no idea if those experiences are credible or not. Whereas you have Vic shows, these people come on and they're able to share their experiences and you can hear it in their voices. These people are genuine, you know. But again, the preconceived notions, especially from those shows, the dog man ripped my husband's face off. He had red eyes and he ate his face, stuff like that. You hear the creepy stuff that's meant to scare you, so that may have contributed to the scare factor there a bit. But I'm trying to make sure I stay on track here and I don't forget what I wanted to say. But I think that's the gist of it there. Vic, if you think I'm forgetting anything or if I'm getting off track, if you can steer me back on. But I think that's the gist of what I wanted to say with that is I almost wonder if they are all just doing their thing, because he could have hurt me, just like Golden Eyes could have all those years ago. When he was young, when we were both young, I was right up on him. I was touching him, his arm when I was wrapping it up. He could have done whatever he wanted me there, even as a 4 foot tall little guy. He had claws and teeth I don't have, but he never did anything bad to me. And now that I think about it, Red Eyes didn't do anything bad to me either. He scared the crap out of me, but that's almost part of it. I think is our lizard brains. We fear the unknown, but part of it I think is my own fault for falling for it, knowing that what we know that these guys are here to put on a show. So sorry if I rambled a bit there. I just wanted to make
No,
sure I got that out.
no, you didn't ramble. The more you talk about a Dogman encounter, the more it's going to benefit you. So if I can keep you talking, then yeah, that's a great thing. So don't apologize for that. And yeah, as long as you remember what you just shared with us, the fact that, yeah, he could have gotten to you and done whatever, but he didn't because he didn't want to, then yeah, you'll be in a much better place than you were, I think, Tuesday when we spoke for the first time about that encounter? Yeah,
Say
I
again,
think it
sorry.
was Tuesday.
Say again,
So
sorry.
now, I was just saying, please remember the fact that, yes, he could have done anything he wanted to do to you, like you just said a few moments ago, but he never harmed you. He was just doing his performance to try to get a response out of you. As long as you remember that and never lose sight of that, then you can definitely deal with this in a healthy way. That's really the only key to being able to do that. So that's why I've told you that so many times to just reinforce it. But Cody, I've got my first question here for you from Shannon Human. It's Humanzor. And Shannon's question is, how far does Cody live from any large body of woods?
Do I live by what? Sorry, you cut out.
No, no problem. Shannon wants to know, how far do you live from any large body of woods?
So I live pretty close to two different separate bodies. There's a nature trail probably about 2 blocks from my house. It's a big wooded area. That's actually one of my favorite places to go. I go there quite often. But the town that I live in Florida is actually on the edge of a massive national forest in the center of the state. So I'm not far at all from the woods.
Yeah, that definitely doesn't help. But then again, I mean, there's nothing like living in the woods or at least by the woods. So, I mean, give a little here, take a little there. So, I guess it all evens out. I've got
Absolutely.
to, that's right. I've got another question for you from James G. And James' question is, what is the relationship between orbs and Dogman? Do you
I
know?
I've heard a little bit about this, and I've seen some stuff on other channels. I don't want to plug any other channels on your show, Vic. I'm not going to do that, but I've seen some more credible stuff than like the creepypasta type stuff. Um, I personally don't know. I've never seen an orb that I'm aware of. Maybe I have and just don't realize it. I may thought it was a light or something. Um, but I've heard that there might be a potential thing with. I think I've heard more of that with like Sasquatch, and you might know more about that than me, Vic. I don't know a whole lot about Sasquatches, but I've heard that there's a potential relation between like orbs and Dogman, Sasquatch, things like that. Some kind of maybe potential alien connection. I can't speak beyond anything I've seen in some other videos and things like that, but I've never seen anything that I can think of.
Got another question for you from Darren. Darren wants to know, where did this encounter happen?
This happened in my backyard in Florida. I live in Central Florida right now, North Central Florida.
Yeah, a lot of people think that there really aren't many dogmen down there in Florida, but yeah, there have been plenty of encounters that have happened there. That's for sure. I've got a comment from Shannon Umanzor again, and her question is, or comment is, not a question, but he may see them on and off for the rest of his life, unfortunately. And that's true, it might happen, but as long as you remember the things that we talked about, Cody, then you should be able to handle them, take them in stride. So I really hope you never forget.
No, absolutely. Like you said, you told me the same thing that you did the first time we talked on the phone call, and I even said it too. I said, I've heard you say that word for word on so many occasions in other recordings on your show and other podcasts you've been on as well. But to hear it come straight from you, it hits different to hear it be directed towards you directly, and then that calmed me down. I'm sure you remember that calmed me down on the phone call almost immediately, and you had a really good analogy too, that really put things into perspective. And like you said, so long as I remember that, keep my mind calm, stay rational about it, then everything should be okay.
That's right, just keep it all in perspective. That's the key to it. It really is. I've got another question for you from Kate Smith, and Kate wants to know, or I guess it's a comment. Her comment is, perhaps the differences between dogmen's eye colors determines the evil in them.
See, that's what I had originally thought too, especially because when I remember Golden Eyes, he had those beautiful gold eyes. And his eyes didn't glow, and I don't remember ever really seeing any eye shine on his eyes, but that's because I never flashed any light directly into his eyes. There was the time that he was in front of my car, but he was standing up above my lights, so they weren't directly in his eyes, so they weren't shining. His eyes didn't glow. Red eyes, his eyes did glow. And I used to think that too, maybe there's a potential connection with that, with the demonic thing, a potentially evil thing. But I almost think after this encounter, just the fact that Red Eyes didn't do anything to me, really, he just looked at me. It was on me for getting freaked out like I did. He really didn't do anything. He probably did try to scare me once he came up to the house. But beyond that, I almost don't know about that anymore. But I'm not an expert by any means. These are just my thoughts over the last couple days.
That's a funny thing. There are no experts in this. You have some people who tell you that they are, but yeah, there are no experts. And I'm not going to share this person's name, but I see a comment that's been left stating that dogmen visit Earth from hell through portals. That's the problem with this whole dogman field. You've got so many people making comments like that as fact when we don't know that. There's no way to know for sure where they come from. So, yeah, if you're going to make a comment about these guys, please separate what we think we do know from what we have no way of knowing. There's no way, like I said, that we could know definitively where these guys come from. So we don't know if they come from hell. We don't know if there's another comment earlier stating that angels call dogmen hellhounds. We don't know that. You, whoever made that comment, doesn't know that definitively. So, yeah, that's what causes so many eyewitnesses and other people who aren't eyewitnesses. They're just really interested in the dogman phenomenon to be so confused about all this. They'll read all this information that's just put out there as fact when in fact it's just opinion. So please keep that in mind. And then I see where Kate Smith has made another comment. She said, I believe if you're a believer, you're protected. And she just might be right.
Maybe, I'm a Christian myself. I definitely believe that there have been times in life that I've been protected by God. A little fun fact about that, actually. I had shared it with Vic, I remember on the first time we talked, but I forgot to mention it the last time we recorded. But I remember the first time I had encountered Golden Eyes as an adult, I was 17 years old. And when I saw him and wasn't fully connecting the dots of what was happening, I had a sense of existential dread that came over me, like I was going to die. Obviously, I didn't, but I got that feeling, And then years later, when I was overseas and I was wounded, I was wounded pretty bad. Like I said, my head got torn up pretty bad, my feet, my knees, my back, everything like that. But I didn't get that sense when that happened. I knew I wasn't going to die. So I feel like there's definitely potentially a sense of protection there. Um, but that's something for me to keep in mind now as well. If I do encounter any more dogmen in the future, do I feel that sense again? But that's a long way around that. I'm sorry, but yeah, there could be potentially some protection there.
Hopefully, we'll never have another encounter, but I guess time will tell. That's yet to be seen. It really is. The next question is from Shannon Umanzor, and Shannon's question is, Cody, do you think dogmen can tell when a person has already had a dogman encounter?
I've heard that before. There's really no way of us knowing. It could be if there's some actual, what's it called? If there's some merit to this imprinting thing. Because like I said before, I feel that Golden Eyes has imprinted on me. I don't know if I have on him or not. And if that's something that other dogmen can see or sense, whatever you want to call it, there's a chance there is. It tends to be that most people that, how do I put it? There are some people that do have multiple encounters. Some people are fortunate enough to only have one, or unfortunate to have one in the first place. But a lot of people have reported multiple encounters. If you remember, Keith came on not too long before I did. He had many, many encounters. And so there's a chance that that is the case. We really just don't have any way of knowing, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's so many things about these guys that it really would be nice to know, but I guess we're going to just have to guess about so many of these things. We've got another comment for you from Kate Smith. She says, to me, being protected means never seeing them. And she just might be right. Like I said, she just might be right about that. We've got another question from Darren for you. Darren wants to know, did you smell him before you saw him?
I'm going to answer that question, but I kind of want to go back to what Katie said real quick. Never encountering one is protection, which is real funny because you think about, I remember Mike and Paul had talked about it last week. There are so many people who say they want to see one, they want to encounter one. And I remember you, Vic, too, you even said, when we recorded last time, you said that I probably don't see it this way, but there are a lot of people who consider me lucky for having the experience I did as a kid. And you think about it, and it's funny. I remember Paul and Mike saying, like, yeah, people want to see one, but they expect it to go like a happy, like, oh, I see you, wave hi, and then leave peacefully. But a lot of times that's not the case. So people get terrified of these things, bluff charges and making their presence known and forcing the encounter. So in a way, Katie, I think you're very right on that. Is the best way is just not to see one. But to answer Darren's question now, I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Oh, no problem. Yeah, he wanted to know if you smelled that dog man before you saw it, talking about red eyes.
I did. Yeah, I did smell him. Because the first thing I realized about the whole thing, I heard that really weird off-sounding like bark sound. And then not long after that, that smell hit me. It was like a mix of wet dog and rotten fish. So I definitely did smell him.
Yeah, they don't smell good. That's for sure. We've got a question. It's a general question from Earth Files UK. And that question is, do dogmen take care of their own dead? We don't know. There's so many things like that we have no way of knowing. All we can do is guess. Maybe someday we'll find out, but I wouldn't hold my breath. I really wouldn't recommend doing that. The next question is from Kay from 1675, and their question is, Cody, did you get the primal feeling, vibration in the chest when it growled? Thanks, Keith.
Oh, absolutely, I did. And I did with Golden Eyes when I was a kid. He growled at me when I first met him, and I got that rattling in my bones. And I definitely felt it this time with Red Eyes, too. And this time, I knew what that sound was, so it scared me even more.
Yeah, I mean, this is a totally different encounter than what you had with Golden Eyes, so I'm sure it did frighten you a lot more. It's not surprising. The next question would be from Marco, aka Joe, and that's kind of a stretch. If his name is Marco, then why does he go by Joe? That's all right. Anyway, his question is, Cody, do you believe dogmen are supernatural beings or flesh and blood animals?
I'm really on the cusp of it. It's so difficult to tell. With the first encounter I had with Golden Eyes, I was able to physically touch him, helping him clean his wound. He bled. So to me, that's a sign of being a flesh and blood, literally blood creature. But you hear of all these other stories, and it's just hard to tell. Like, even with this past encounter this last week with Red Eyes, like I said, I heard the sounds of the scratching on the wall and the walking on the roof. Now you figure a creature that's probably 8, 9 feet tall is going to do some damage when it jumps up onto something like that. But the roof looked unharmed. There were no scratches on the wall, and there was nothing on any of the fences outside. So that almost makes me think maybe he was something potentially supernatural. The fact that he didn't damage anything, I have no idea. It's such a strange thing to try and figure out because, like I said, Golden Eyes, I physically touched him and he looked like a natural thing that should exist in the world to me. Red Eyes, when I first saw him, he didn't look natural. He looked like a movie monster. It's just so hard to tell. Every Dogman seems to be so different. And that it's almost like you almost have to wonder, are we ever really going to know? Do we really want to know? I mean, we do because we ask, and people research. But really, my opinion, I'm leaning more towards I think flesh and blood creatures, but it's almost impossible to say.
I've said this before. If you do what I do for any period of time, it's only natural you're going to bounce back and forth from at one moment being convinced that these guys have to be flesh and blood, and then the next moment you're convinced that, okay, maybe they're aliens or maybe they're supernatural beings. You just bounce back and forth, back and forth. If you think about it, if they are flesh and blood, how could you explain an eyewitness in Vermont having an encounter one morning, for example? They get freaked out, they fly home to Miami or to some place around the Everglades, actually. And then the next morning, they have an encounter with the same dog man out their back door. If it's flesh and blood, you cannot explain that away. But if they're supernatural, you could. But then again, on the other hand, if they are supernatural, then they do so many things that point soundly towards them being flesh and blood. So, yeah, it's really a vicious circle that is just so hard to make sense out of. It really is. The next question for you is from Raider, and Raider wants to know, Cody, is there a chance it's offspring? Is there a chance it is offspring of Golden Eyes, or is he too big to be his?
I never thought of that. I don't think he is just because he looks so drastically different. Golden Eyes, like I said, he looked like he had the head of a large timber wolf on like a super jacked body, like an almost humanoid body. But his coloration, his build, everything was so different from Red Eyes. I don't really think there is a connection there. And again, the fact that, well, like Vic just touched on it, but I'm from Minnesota and that's where I encountered Golden Eyes. And now down here in Florida, this completely different encounter. But like Vic just talked on, just somebody encountered one in Vermont and then the same one again in Miami. So I guess that could potentially be a chance. But I didn't think of it that way, but I think they just looked too different. Like the head shape especially was extremely different. It's not to say that it's not to say that a muscular person can't have a skinny person offspring, but I think they just looked way too entirely different to be potentially related.
I think you might be onto something. That's one heck of a variance in appearance for those two to be related. So, yeah, I bet you're right. I bet they're not. I've got another question for you from Darren, and his question is, doesn't it make more sense that these creatures are an off-world species making their way here?
I've heard of that theory too, that they're aliens. That's intriguing. I
Yeah.
love the idea of aliens. I can't imagine we're the only life in the universe. So to think that there's a potential chance that this super advanced canid race crashed on Earth and they're just stuck here, that's a fascinating thought, but I have no way to to prove that. I don't think anybody does. But it is a really interesting thought, Darren. I'm glad you brought that up.
It is interesting. And that really would explain a lot of things. Maybe they are. Time will tell. Well, possibly time will tell. I wouldn't hold my breath for that, though. I've got another question for you from Toby McKimmy. And Toby's question is, can dogmen mind speak if they choose to?
I think I have experienced that. If anybody remembers me recounting about Golden Eyes, when after I had helped him in the barn, when he got back up and he was about to go out of the barn, he looked back at me before running out, and I could have sworn I heard clear as day in my mind somebody say thank you. Now I was 12 years old. That was 17 years ago. I'm 28 now. I'll be 29 soon. So that was 17 years ago, 2007. So it could be, especially with the way my mind is now, I could be misremembering, but I feel like I heard something in my head say thank you to me that day. So that's my experience with it. I didn't hear anything like that this time, but there are so many other eyewitnesses that have reported hearing it. So there's a strong leaning towards, yeah, maybe.
That's right. Yeah, you would be far from the first dogman eyewitness to report experiencing something like that. Yeah, a lot of very credible eyewitnesses, just like you, Cody, have reported that experience of experienced mind speak from these guys. Don't know how they do it, but apparently on some occasions they do, and that's a fact. And then moving forward, it looks like Kate Smith has another comment. She's saying, I think the government are experts, but they're not sharing. And that's a good point. They probably are experts. They probably have these guys in cages and all. I wouldn't put it past them to be creating these guys. Not all dogmen, in my opinion, are created in a test tube, but I think with our technology now, some are. All of this talk about having microchip dogmen and all this, it might have some truth to it if we are actually creating them in test tubes. But again, I want to make sure I'm clear on this and saying that, yeah, I don't think for a second that all dogmen were created by the government, because if they were, that wouldn't explain all the encounters that date way back before we had anything approaching the technology to do something like that. Think about 1887 in Wexford County, Michigan. That's the first documented dogman encounter. And just imagine, back then, we didn't have anything approaching the technology to make a test tube dogman. So that's why I say that.
I kind of can't help but laugh when I hear those kind of theories. Not to discredit or make fun of anyone, because it could very well be. But I think, to me, I've worked at government jobs at every level, from federal down to city, and I honestly just don't think anybody in the government's competent enough to do anything like that. But it could be. You never know.
Yeah, you never do know. That's true. Good point. It looks like Earth Files UK has the next question. They want to know, so Cody is having contact with dogmen in another state where his first encounter took place?
Yes, my first encounter took place in my home state of Minnesota. And then the following ones with the same Dogman Golden Eyes all took place in Minnesota. This one took place in Florida, where I live now.
That clears that up. Then it looks like Blood Viper has a comment. That comment is, I'm not a believer, and all those scared never held, never hurt. And then I'm scrolling down, looking for the next question. It's funny, Kate Smith made a comment stating, I know better. I never want to see them ever. And that's smart.
It is.
That is smart. And then Raider wants to know, did Golden Eyes stink also?
I don't remember him having a smell. Granted, again, remember, this was 17 years ago when I encountered him for the first time. And I was so young, and I was terrified in the moment that if there was, I probably didn't notice. It was also the fact, too, that when I encountered him one-on-one, he was inside of our family storage barn, and that was kind of a musty old barn. So it had its own smell in there, so it may have masked it, or I just may not have remembered it, or he may not have had one at all. I unfortunately can't give a full answer on that one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, barn definitely will hide some smells. It'll mask them, that's for sure. The next question is from Sig1212, and their question is, or I guess it's a comment, combat changes your paradigm, exactly like seeing a Dogman. And that's true, it will.
Yeah, I've experienced both, and I can attest to that.
Yeah, definitely. And again, like I told you, I'm so sorry to hear that you suffered that traumatic brain injury, but thank you so much for serving our country. I can't thank you enough. It looks like Kate Smith has the next question, which is, do dogmen live as long as a normal dog? Well, that's one of those questions there that we don't have any way of knowing. Maybe if you asked government tech who supervises this dogman or that dogman in the cage somewhere the government's got them locked up, they could probably answer that for you. Or maybe they couldn't. I don't know. It depends on how long they've had them in captivity. But yeah, I've got no way of answering that question for you, unfortunately.
Maybe we'll get lucky one day, and one of those people that do that will reach out to you, Vic, and they'll get on the show and they'll regale us all.
Yeah, that's going to happen. Yeah, if that does happen, that's when you need to go out and before you get into your car or truck, check under it every time for a bomb or something. But yeah, don't hold your breath on that. It looks like Kate Smith has another comment. She says, because they share some traits of dogs, perhaps they only live like 15 or 20 years. And yeah, that's possible. It's entirely possible. I think they live longer than that, but who am I to say? It's really hard to say. And then it looks like Raider has another comment he wants to share with you. He says, Cody, I had gray aliens in my house around 1997, and I do think that's what they are, alien.
Yeah, like that could potentially tie back in. Somebody asked the question about the orbs, and then I think it was Darren asked about them being extraterrestrial. Like, hey, if you saw it yourself, then that could lead to some credence to it.
It could. It sure could. Kate's got another comment. She says, I do think that dogmen are like humans. Some are good and some are bad. And I agree. I think she's right on that.
I think just about every living creature is going to be that way,
Yeah, that's normally how it is. Name one creature where every last specimen is good. Doesn't happen.
No.
It just doesn't. The next question is from Ian, and Ian's question is, if you had to have another one, what would be an ideal dogman encounter?
Well, not to have one is the first thing that comes to mind, but to answer your question, for me, I guess the encounters I've had have been ideal. Like even this one last week, like I said, Red Eyes, he didn't do anything to me. He just scared me. And part of that's my own fault for letting myself be so scared like that, having known a little bit of what I know. But I guess if I were to have the ideal encounter again, it would be to see Golden Eyes again in a friendly manner, I haven't seen him super close up since I was 12 when I first encountered him, and then 17 he was in front of my car. When I saw him last when I was 25, he was out in a field and I was in an apartment across the street. So I haven't seen him close up in a long time. I guess, again, that's not to say that I think that that's what we should be doing. That's not to say that that's what I want. But if it were to happen, to have the ideal thing, I guess, would be to maybe see him again in a friendly way, and maybe see if the mind speak thing is real, have a conversation. But I'm not holding my breath for any of that.
Yeah, I don't see that ever happening, so
No,
definitely don't hold your breath for it. And I've got a comment here from Darren. Good man. He says, thank you so much for your service to our country, and I love you all.
Well, thank you. Right back at you.
Definitely. And then I see a comment from Fiber Geek saying that he asked a question way back in the feed. Well, I didn't see it. I apologize for that. So please type it in all caps again so I don't miss that. And then moving on, I've got a question from Lene Cute Z. And Lene's question is, Cody, how did you feel when you touched Golden Eyes? And how did he feel? Meaning his fur, blood color, etc.
Yeah, that was something else, I don't think I really touched on that last time on how it really was. Um, his fur color was that coyote and timberwolf coloring, that light gray mixed in with the brown and the blacks and the whites and that kind of stuff. And his blood was red when I saw it. I could see it coming out of his arm. There was some dripping onto the floor when I helped him clean it up. When I touched him, he felt firm. His forearm, his front left forearm, was where he was scratched, and on his how do I describe this? From his head down to his shoulders, he was pretty fur covered, and then once it started to get down to his torso and onto his forearms, the fur tapered pretty good. Now his forearms are pretty bare from fur, and he was firm when I felt him. He wasn't a big, jacked out bodybuilder like he became when he was an adult. But even when he had a young age like that, he still had a pretty good looking muscular build to him at that young age. It was kind of similar to mine when I was 12 years old. Not to say that I was built or anything as a 12-year-old, but I was in good shape, for the age. But his arm felt firm, and it wasn't, the side with fur on it felt like just soft fur, like you'd expect to feel on a fluffy coyote if you ever felt one. I've got a coyote pelt at home, hanging on the wall, and it's soft. So that's what his fur felt like for sure. But his skin, it almost felt just like regular skin, like a human's. But his arm was firm. He had some muscle to him, even as a little guy.
I
He
can only
felt
imagine.
warm. He felt warm for sure. Like a warm-blooded creature does.
I can only imagine what it must have been like to actually touch Dogman. That is just amazing. It must be. I've got a comment from K from 1675. Their comment is, Cody, I'd suggest checking to see if there are any old/new articles regarding dogmen in your area.
That is a really good idea. And I should do that because I've actually seen some stuff like that with Bigfoot sightings in this area. So I should check to see if there's anything Dogman related.
Yeah, there just might be. Michelle's got the next question, which is, I've considered that perhaps if one of the dogmen know you, they all do. The mind speak makes me feel like that's possible. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, maybe. I don't think there's probably not a hive mind or anything, like in insects, but there could be a chance with that. I think somebody had kind of asked something similar earlier, and it could very well be they somehow know. There's just no way we're ever going to know. I think at this point it's because we're teetering on that line of are they physical creatures, are they spiritual, supernatural, whatever you want to call it. And it could very well be. It's just another one of those things that we don't know. I'm sorry I can't answer your question, but that's just how I feel about it.
Add it to the list of questions we're probably never going to know the answers to,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
but
And
they're
I'm
still fun
seeing,
to ask. So
oh, sure, yeah, it definitely is. And I'm seeing other questions or comments about people asking questions I didn't address. Yeah, if you asked a question way back that I haven't asked, then yeah, please just be sure to type it in all caps again so that I'll catch it this time. I apologize for missing any. And then I've got another question for you from G Black Sheep. And their question is, did you feel hypnotized at all?
the closest I would feel to being hypnotized, I think, is when I would encounter golden eyes. I had mentioned, looking into his eyes made me freeze. Largely, I think because I didn't know what I was looking at, and that's maybe the fight or flight response, like a deer freezes in headlights. You see something like that. That's the closest I think I've ever been to something like that. I don't think full on hypnotized, but seeing his eyes and freezing, not knowing what to do. Taken aback both by the beauty. He had the most beautiful golden eyes. He did, and then just the what am I looking at? The shock. But I don't think straight up hypnotized.
Yeah, I'm sure it felt like a bolt of electricity went through you. Every time you see these guys, it probably feels that way. It looks like Raiders got the next question, and that question is, how big lengthwise was GoldenEye's? You might have said it, but I missed it.
I'm guessing he was probably 7 feet tall at the largest when I saw him. The only way I have to gauge off of that is when I encountered him when I was 17 years old the second time. I was driving my car home at night, and he ran in front of my car when I was stopped, and he was standing straight up in front of me. And I really had no other way to gauge how tall he would have been. I'm just guessing that he was probably about 7 feet at that time. When he was when he was young, when I first encountered him, I guessed he was about 4 feet tall. And the way that I gauged that was because when I first saw him, he was leaning up against a gate up by the house. And that gate I remember was 5 feet tall. And I know that because when I was 12 years old, I was 5 feet tall. And when he was leaning up about against that gate, he looked like he had about a foot underneath of it. So I think when he was young, he was probably about 4 feet. And then when I counted him again, he was probably about 7 feet. And then the third time, I really have no way of knowing because I saw him out in an open field from the balcony of my apartment.
They do seem to grow pretty quickly, so that does fit. It looks like Black Sheep's got another question for you. They want to know if you experienced any psychic vision or anything.
The closest thing would be is I think is those dreams that I've had. If people don't know or didn't hear the previous episode, I started having those kind of weird dreams when I first moved down here to Florida. I moved down here at the end of 2021, and the last time I saw Golden Eyes was in the summer of 2020. But after I moved down here, I get these dreams very, very infrequently, and it'll be just me and him in kind of a white space, and sometimes we'll talk to each other in this dream. Like the first time I ever had this dream, he looked at me and his mouth doesn't move when he talks like this. So this might lead a little more into the mind speak thing. But the first thing he ever said to me in this dream was, "Where are you?" And then I immediately woke up. And then anytime I've had it after, I've asked him questions and he'll sometimes respond mostly by just like giving a nod or a shake of the head. He hasn't really talked much otherwise. But again, these may just be dreams. We really don't have any way of knowing, especially with my brain injuries. There's a good chance that it's just dreams, but it might not be. There might be some more communication in the future. And I'm really sorry to the people that listened last time and wanted an update. There unfortunately is no update. I haven't had any more like that recently.
Well, like I said before, I hope your days of having encounters are behind you, but I mean, goodness gracious, last Saturday you just had one, so who's to say? It's hard to know. Kate Smith left a comment which states, I think they should leave us alone and vice versa. And that would be nice. That would be really nice.
I agree. There's what is it? There's a quote that sums it up perfectly when I think of that. It's from The Lost World Jurassic Park, the second movie. At the end of the movie, John Hammond's doing the press conference, and what does he say? He says, "These creatures require our absence, not our presence, to survive." And I think that that hits the nail on the head for me when I hear that. I think of the same way with the Dogmen. They don't need us, and we certainly don't need them. I think we should just leave well enough alone.
That's great advice. Really good advice. I've got another question for you from Michigan Meat Eater, and his question is, how big were GoldenEye's hands, comparing that to a human of similar size?
They were certainly bigger. I will say that. They were elongated, and the fingers were much longer than you'd find on a person. And I mean, he was just big in general. He's a big boy.
Yeah, sounds like it.
I remember he had claws on his hands too, like not the dog claws you'd expect. I've heard other people kind of compare it to like raccoon hands and raccoon claws, maybe a little bit like that, but they were big. I don't really even know how to compare them. They were just certainly bigger and longer than a human's hands would be.
They definitely do have disproportionately large hands. Being as big as they can be, if you imagine hands that are too big or look too big to fit a body of that big size. That's going to kind of give you an idea. A big one could put its hand on top of a trash can lid, and the thumb would be on one edge, and then the tips of its other fingers would be on the other edge. Think about that, a trash can sized, talking about like a metal trash can, that is, a trash can lid sized hand. That's a big hand. Not talking about the talons or anything. That's just the fingers. That's how big their hands can get.
Yeah.
Huge, really big. It looks like Truth Iris wants to know, have you had any paranormal or ghost encounters?
I want to tentatively say yes. I was stationed in Okinawa, Japan for 3.5 years, and Okinawa is largely considered to be haunted because of the atrocities that happened there in World War II. And there were some weird things that I saw. There was some weird things that other people that I was there with also said they saw. Probably the scariest one that I can think of off the top of my head. I'll share this story just real quick. I was in my barracks room late at night one night. I was in my bed. I didn't have a roommate because I was a non-commissioned officer, so I raided my own room in the barracks. But I turned over in my bed. Why do all these stories always, Vic? They always start with me not being able to sleep in bed, and I turn over and I see something.
Yeah, good point.
Because that's when I first saw Golden Eyes too. But I turned over in my bed, and in the corner, I saw what looked like this strange, tall, floating black like mist in the corner, and then above it, floating above that, was like a white circle of mist. And I remember flicking on my lamp next to my bed, and it went away. And I thought, oh, my mind's just playing tricks on me. And I turned off the lamp, and then it was there again. So needless to say, I slept with the lights on that night. But yeah, I saw some kind of strange things like that when I was overseas. And a lot of the other people I was over there with said they saw similar things as well.
That's something I never really thought about. When you consider how many people died there, I guess it would make sense that it would be so haunted.
A
So,
super common thing is hearing voices, mainly in Japanese. Some people reported hearing like little girls laughing, or somebody talking like frantically in a language they just didn't understand, or they're hearing footsteps in the barracks at night. Lots of stuff like that. So,
well, that's awfully creepy. I've got another question for you from Captain Solo. And their question is, do they know who God is?
I have no way of knowing that for myself, but I certainly do.
Good man. Good way to answer that, too. And then Mike wants everyone to know that he had an encounter with a dogman in Delaware, and its legs were like a kangaroo. Ever heard of that?
I have heard of somebody describe them like kangaroo legs before. I guess you mean like they kind of bend weird and they're really super long. That's what comes to mind.
I think that's what he was asking about.
Yeah. Yeah, I have heard other encounters describe it like that before.
I'm pretty sure that's what he wanted to know. Looks like Jason B has a question for you, and that question is, and this is a question that it's a take it or leave it question. There's no pressure to answer this or any other questions that I throw at you, but I'll put it out there for you to decide. His question is, are your parents Christian?
Yes, they are. Yeah, I was raised in a Christian household. Yeah, it's actually my mom is really the one who. My mom was the most devout person I'd ever known. She passed away when I was 18 years old in training for boot camp, but she was the most devout person I ever knew, and it was largely because of her that I was brought to the faith myself. And even now, my stepmom, my dad has since remarried. She is a very good Christian woman as well. So
That's great. Looks like Lanae Cutesy wants to make sure that you know that she's thanking you for answering her question. And then also she said, amazing once in a lifetime experience. Some people might not say amazing. They might describe it a different way, but yes, for most people, for most eyewitnesses, it is a once in a lifetime experience. Thank goodness for that too. Definitely,
yeah,
thank
sure.
goodness. Harvest Mary Moon wants to know, do dogmen attack people and what do they eat? I'm going to answer that question for you, Harvest Mary Moon, by saying Over the years, I've been doing this since 2007. I have spoken with thousands upon thousands of Dogman eyewitnesses. Think about that number. And the grand total of credible eyewitnesses who've ever told me about being harmed, intentionally harmed by a dogman, is a whopping, are you braced and ready for it? 6 or 7, maybe, might be 8. But when on one side you weigh that big number, the pool of thousands upon thousands, with how many have actually been intentionally harmed, 6, 7, maybe 8, that should tell you everything about the mindset of these guys. Again, I'm never going to say that dogmen are safe to be around because, yeah, I mean, you name the critter out there that doesn't have any deviant examples. They're dangerous camels or horses or pigs or goats that will kill you if they get the opportunity to do that, and if they have the ability, if they're big enough to do that. But why should dogmen be any different? Yes, you are going to have dangerous Sasquatch, dangerous dogmen. But when you look at the big picture, you're talking about a guy here who's spoken with thousands upon thousands of eyewitnesses. So many of those have been in very compromising circumstances, situations where the dogmen that they encountered, if that dogman wanted to wipe them off the face of the earth, it could have done that easily. But yet they were allowed to leave the encounter without a single scratch. So that right there tells me that, no, I have not spoken with every dogman eyewitness out there. No, I never have claimed to. But when you look at that number, the sample size that I've dealt with over the years, and can honestly say that only 6, 7, maybe 8 credible eyewitnesses who I've spoken with have ever reported being harmed, that right there does tell me definitively these guys are not wired to rip you apart on sight the way so many people out here are trying to portray them as having that mindset. If that was the case, then the numbers I've been seeing, again, thousands upon thousands over here on one side, the pool sample size, and then on this side over here, how many have been attacked? 6, 7, maybe 8 out of that pool of people that I've spoken with. So that's why I say on so many shows that these guys clearly are not wired to rip you apart on sight. It seems like their MO is just to try and get a rise out of you, unfortunately. Well, that's a lot better than them trying to rip you apart, but it's unfortunate that they can ruin so many lives by just trying to terrorize people the way they do. It's really unfortunate. All right, moving forward, it looks like Kate Smith has another comment. She's saying, I think if they're hungry enough, they'll eat anything. But that's the thing, though, Keith. These guys don't have any trouble feeding themselves. If you think mountain lions have earned the moniker, have earned the nickname, I should say, deer-killing machines, these guys make mountain lions look like rank amateurs when it comes to hunting deer. They do not have any trouble feeding themselves. They're so much faster than deer. I mean, they're so much more powerful than mountain lions. They have weaponry that just goes so far and beyond what anything out there can match. They do not have trouble feeding themselves. I think that's one of the biggest reasons why they like to torment people so much. They spend so little time out of their day feeding themselves that leaves them with so much time left over. They've got to do something with all that time. As intelligent as they are, I can only imagine how bored they get. So I think to pass the time, that's the reason behind a lot of these encounters. They're just messing with people to kind of entertain themselves, in my opinion. Again, I could be totally wrong on that, but that's just why I think they do it so often. And then it looks like Kate does have a question, and that question is, I wonder if dogmen mate for life, or are they horn dogs? Well, yeah, again, that's another question that I don't think we're ever going to know the answer to. And thank goodness for that. Yeah, definitely. And then it looks like Fiber Geek has a comment. And that comment is, I've heard the white/gray space in your dreams are the 5th dimension / density. Well, yeah, that might be. No idea, though. We're probably never going to know the answer to that either. Ranting Greek Gamer wants to know, Cody, was Golden Eyes a tall creature, and was he hostile initially?
Initially, he was not tall. No, I gauged he was about 4 feet tall. As an adult, I gauged he was probably about 7 feet tall. When I first met him face to face, he definitely, he bared his teeth and he growled at me because he was sitting in the corner licking his wounds and his fur all puffed up, his tail got all puffy. He didn't really exhibit any hostility beyond that. And then once if you remember the story, I gave him a couple rolls of summer sausage from my dad's fridge that was in the barn there. And after that, he stopped growling, but he still kept his eyes on me like, I'm watching you, don't do anything stupid. So that made me pretty fearful even when I went to try and help him clean him up, because he started to growl a little bit again when I went towards him, but I was able to keep him calm and show him I'm not doing anything, I'm not going to hurt you. And then after helping him out, there was no more growling, there was none of that. So no hostility after that. The most extensive of him being hostile was just the growling to show like, hey, don't do anything, and I didn't. So
The fact that you were nervous, that you were on edge, that just shows you have common sense. If you're that close to a dog man and you're not on edge, something isn't right. All right. I've got a question for you from G Black Sheep, and their question is, could it have been a Bigfoot with a wolf fur over its head? Maybe a shaman class.
I don't really know much about Sasquatch. You definitely have more knowledge on that than I do, Vic. But I don't think he was. I think he was definitely, after all these years, after hearing all these things, I think he was 100% a dog man. He looked like, when he was young, he looked like a coyote that stood on his hind legs from time to time, When he was an adult, he looked like a big wolf with a humanoid body. I don't think he was a Bigfoot. I think he was a dog man.
Yeah, if it was a Bigfoot, even with some kind of a fur cloak over it, wolf skin or something like that, you would know it. You wouldn't mistake it for a bona fide dog man. So,
It would have to be
yeah.
a huge wolf cloak, too. Plus, he had a tail. I've never heard of a Sasquatch story having a tail.
No, but even if it was a wolf fur, a wolf hide, and it had the tail attached, a Sasquatch isn't going to be able to wrap that around itself and make you think it's a bona fide dog man. So
Sure.
you saw what you saw, and
No,
that's all there is to it.
because I touched him. There was nothing loose about him, so he didn't have anything on.
Oh, definitely. And it looks like I've got another question from Claynot Nalu. And their question is, I'm interested if type 3 dog men are able to walk on all fours. Were they seen on all fours? I don't know of any encounters where eyewitnesses have reported seeing them walking on all fours. They do have hominid-style legs instead of digitigrade-style legs. So I guess it's still possible since Sasquatch can walk quadrupedally. Why shouldn't these guys be able to? But I don't know that for sure. I'm not going to guess. All I can do is just tell you that overall, the type 3 eyewitnesses I've spoken with, I don't think I've ever been told about them ever seeing one walking on all fours. So that's a good question. Really good question. And then Blood Viper is saying, asked 3 times now, Vic, and then he's laughing. Well, I apologize. I still haven't seen your question, and I'm going question by question that's in bold type. So I don't know what's going on, but I haven't seen your question. And then it looks like Michigan Meat Eater wants to know, how high did it jump to get onto your roof?
That's a good question. I live if anybody that's listening lives in Florida, you know exactly what I mean when I say I have just a small single story, block house with stucco on it. It's not a big house. It's not tall. It's just single story. I would guess maybe 10 or 11 feet. That's my estimate.
Which is a good jump for it to get all of its body up there. That's an impressive jump, especially when it's as heavy as it is. But yeah, these guys can jump like it's going out of style. So that's pretty typical. Mona Gregory wants to know, and this is more of a general question, have you seen dogmen travel in a group? My husband saw 3 of them here in Alaska. And to answer that, credible eyewitnesses have reported seeing groups of dogmen, but I think that's definitely the exception and not the rule. And I'll tell you why. Wolves operate in numbers out of necessity. To dispatch the prey they go after, it's going to require either the power that the wolf pack brings or their ability to run relays and tire the game because the game is too fast for just one wolf to dispatch. But with Dogmen, they can catch anything they want to catch because they have the speed to outrun anything they're going to try and predate upon. And then also they have the power to take down anything by themselves that they're going to try to take down, even bison. So when you look at that, coupled with the fact that a mature dogman's daily caloric requirements must be ridiculous, as big as they are. So if that's the case, it wouldn't make sense, them being obligate carnivores on top of that, for them to operate and hang around in numbers. They would deplete the resources in any particular area almost overnight if they did hang out in numbers instead of alone. So that's why, in my opinion, it just makes total sense that if they do come together, it's on very rare occasions. Well, having said that, it's about time for us to get out of here, Cody. But before we do you have any closing comments you'd like to put out there for us?
I just want to say thank you again to everybody for the support you've given me, both from the previous time I was on and this time. And I really hope that we all are able to remember Vic's words. Should we encounter something like this, should anyone out there encounter something like this again, that, they don't seem to be high wired to hurt, kill people, just remember that it's all for show. They're just trying to scare you, get their fun out of you. And please don't take the measures that I did at first this last week. Please try to get some help if you can, and make sure that you deal with it in a healthy way.
That's all very well said. And like I told you at the end of that conversation Tuesday, I'll tell you again, if you ever need help, if you have any other encounters, for example, and need help dealing with them, I'm not going anywhere, just like you did before. Please let me know, because you're never going to be alone in this. And for everyone out there listening, thank you so much for helping eyewitnesses the way you do. I mean, this is a perfect example. You listen to Cody talk about how much your support helped him. Well, this is just a repeating thing. If you only knew how many eyewitnesses have told me how much your support has helped them. I can't thank you enough for doing that, for listening to the show, for supporting these eyewitnesses. Again, I can't thank you enough. And if you've had an encounter with a dogman that you would like to talk with me about, there's no requirement ever to come on the show and share it publicly. Then, yeah, by all means, just go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report, and I'll be more than happy to schedule a good long phone conversation with you if you have had an encounter and you would like to also come on the show and put it out there for all the listeners as well. We can definitely do that too, but that's totally up to you if we take it to that step or not. But having said that, Cody, thanks again so much for coming on and sharing this latest experience with us. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Vic. Thanks for having me again.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks again for your time, and have a great night.